Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Knocked Conscious. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Master Shaman PaLiChee. It was a very interesting conversation. Here it is. I hope you enjoy it.
Right.
Welcome, Master PaLiChee,
Yes,
Master
you're welcome.
Shaman PaLiChee, to
Yes.
Knocked Conscious.
Thanks
How
for
are you?
having me, Mark.
Yes, thank you for reaching out to me. We reached out through some podcast collaborative network, and you had reached out to me. So you're a psychic medium. You have gifts. I know of gifts. Please share with me why you can connected to me, what your thoughts are, and we'll just follow the flow of the conversation. We'll align
Yeah.
with the current of the energy. How about that?
Yes. Well, I thought Knocked Conscious was great. The name itself, because
Thank
I'm
you.
here to unlimit limiting beliefs, and um, I was brought to you through sort of like a urge to come into your podcast to kind of give insights into really what that really means. And you're not conscious kind of threw me off a little bit in regards to a good throw off because that's what I'm here to do as a shaman. So
Mm. It's a very beautiful thing. So there is a kind of a spiritual or some kind of paranormal piece to that knocked conscious because I had an event that literally knocked me conscious to
mhm.
start looking for truth. So
Yes,
I am always open to new ideas, belief systems, things. I've had personal experiences that if people told me they experienced them, I would accept that they experienced them, but I
yeah,
don't know if I could technically believe it the way they would believe it per se.
right.
Um, so because everyone's experienced things personally, I think that direct connection is where we translate it. And I think when we add institutions, I think that corrupts that and that messes up with the personal translation because everyone's individual in their own right.
Yes, each individual's experience is going to be so different. However, everything is going to be very similar. So
In what ways would you say they would be similar?
similar as in the spiritual and energetic way. So when you say knocked conscious and you had a experience to that, before I came on this show and before I reached out, I was like, something had to happen. Something had to happen. And almost like a very spiritual part of you was knocked conscious. So through the situation. I don't know what you've been through. This is the first time I'm meeting you, Mark. But
Absolutely.
just from a
And I'm
feeling
not
of
going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to ask you for lottery numbers. I promise you I won't do that. This is ridiculous to have that kind of concept in
yeah,
that way. So
but from just kind of like a feel of things, it's just something very spiritual of the soul that had to experience something phenomenal, and very spiritual, energetic wise, to shift that consciousness. And in order for it to do that, because even if somebody was to say, "Hey, Mark, you have to believe in this. Hey, Mark, this is what happened to me," you're not going to automatically believe it. You're going to be like, like, I wonder how that happened, or I wonder if that's true. It's only when
now,
it
how could we
happens,
explain it away, right? How could, it's not a UFO, it's a cloud, or, whatever, those types of things.
right? And it's only when that person actually either saw it with their eyes, and even some people, when they see it with their own eyes, they still can't believe it. So they have to really experience that within themselves, within their soul. And what that really means is you have a experience with your mind, with your memory, with their body, with the how you are feeling energetically. Therefore, then you don't have to be convinced. Then you will automatically believe. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. Absolutely. Now, what's interesting is with my experiences, I come from the logic reason side. So this is the analogy I always use. If you went back in time with like a lighter, like a cigarette lighter, and you walked up to a caveman and you made fire come out of your hand,
Right.
they would either worship you or they would stone you. There's nothing in between of that. There's no way that they would understand that concept, right?
Right. Right.
So my understanding to me is that we will get to the understanding of everything at some point. We're just not there. Now that defies the traditional God, because God is the one who knows or whatever everything. But I'd like to table that for a second because I got off on a tangent. I would love to hear about you and your story. Would you like to
Uh-huh.
share with me who you are, how you became who you are? I'm not going to ask what you do because that's a ridiculous thing. Let's get to who you are.
So who am I? I am a person just like everybody else. Um, I went through a ton of experiences such as comas, hitting my head a lot when I was a kid. I wasn't clumsy, but I just gotten to the point where my head was hit like at least 3 times, and I got in comas 3 times. Through those comas, I had different experiences of the afterlife. I've also had a very out of body experience at about between 2, 3 years old, in as I was waking up in my bedroom as a kid, toddler.
And you have a memory of that at 2 or 3, which is I it doesn't make me question it at all. It's just a more remarkable thing because the general public does not have memories back to that age. So I find
Yeah,
that interesting. Once again, it only to share the information in a general sense because we have to both look at both sides for people to accept what we're kind of experiencing, if that makes
right, right. And I don't look for acceptance. That's the thing. I don't think I
no,
ever
not at all.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah, because why? Because each person's experience, like we had just talked about, is a different experience. And you're not going to believe what I say. I'm not going to believe what you say, but it's only a story for you to kind of ponder on, or maybe just say, oh, that sounds interesting. Do I believe it? I don't have to. But once you get to a certain vibration in the body level, you will start to experience some things. And then that's going to bring you to believe. Does that make sense? So,
absolutely, for sure.
the question is, who am I? I am Chivu. That's my name. I was a kid. My parents migrated to the US because of the Cold War in the 70s. I am Hmong, and of Hmong background. I came from the Hmong is the people that has been, I would say it's probably, I consider it one of the most genocided and in persecution peoples of the world. One of the most in the in the population became more in China now, but back in the olden days, even in China, we were the most killed people, so to speak,
Persecuted type individuals.
persecuted. Yep, shunned out of whatever that we did. Our cultures were shut down completely, and we had to do it as we knew it for our ancestors. So my lineage comes from ancient ancestors. I can't say it any different. I don't know how to say it any different. I grew up thinking that shamanism was what everybody did, right? It was normal to
Right.
me.
So you were also born there and then
I
came
was
over?
born I was born so ancient China was ancient China. We got pushed out to Thailand, and then we had to migrate, or actually migrated to Laos. And 200 years ago or so, our peoples were in ancient China from more than 5,000 years ago, but pushed out so many times. There's still people there, the ones that stood their ground or kept just blended in. And then there's us, the ones that moved out and migrated out to Laos. We were the ones that were rebelling. We're not going to be under you. We're not going to do that. We're going to still hold our ancestors true. So we moved out to Laos, right? Still got,
Mhm.
some things going there during the Cold War. Are the
Absolutely.
people?
I mean, that's a hotbed at that time, I would think.
Oh yeah, a lot of politics. Everything went on during that time. And so we had to migrate out, and we migrated where? US. They came, we came, right? They came there, we came with them because
Right.
the Hmong people were actually part of their so-called operations.
Oh, well, it's nice that we did something nice for some people. instead of
You
some of the
can
other
look at
stuff
it
we do.
that way. There's a, there's the balance,
It's
there's
a dichotomy to that for
yes,
certain, right?
yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so we're
So,
here.
okay, so how old were you when you came to the United States?
When I came, I was about 1.
Okay. So
So I
all of
grew up
your trauma things, your head injuries happened in the United States?
in the United
Trauma?
States in our first home that we lived in Michigan, in Michigan. And it was an older home. As a kid, I remember seeing, feeling things in that home as a kid. This is like 2 to 3 years old. And as I grew up, I think we stayed there about maybe 1 or 2 more years, and then we moved out to California from there. But that was one of the biggest phenomena that happened in that house when I was about 2 to 3 was the angel in the ceiling. So that was an experience, a
Okay,
personal
so
experience.
please share that story. So I have not heard about the angel in the ceiling. So you're two, and you had this is your out of body experience that you're going to talk, or was it an NDE kind of out of body experience from a head injury?
It wasn't an NDE, it was a OBE. So out of body experience, not a near death experience in that case, because I was basically in bed sleeping. This is like 2 to 3 year old toddler. I hear my parents in the background. They're like in the morning, they're kind of talking, arguing about financial things and then about culture because it was a clash. They were new to the whole US American society. So they had culture clashes, then didn't know much English. My dad knew English, but some, but he wasn't like great at it, but he knew how to get
Absolutely
by.
fluent and like, blending in that way, right? You
Yes,
would
in that
definitely know
way.
he's not American, I guess, because he didn't
He's not
speak American. He spoke
American. And
English.
this is then, early 80s. So there was a lot of racial discrimination back then, to,
I was
fresh
born in
off the boat.
74, just so you know. So I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up in that whole 80s, Commando, shoot 'em up, run, coming out of Vietnam and Rambo, and I mean,
Yeah.
just that whole era of machismo and everybody's the enemy except for good old USA kind of thing.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember those times.
And the Hmong was right with the USA. I'll tell you that. But when we got here, we're kind of left and just say, hey, go and run, do what you need to do to survive, right?
Yeah.
So my dad and mom was talking in the background, kind of loud, because this is early morning. I was barely in the awake and half sleep state. As a kid, I remember exactly, very clearly, vividly what was going on, but I can hear what's going on in the back as well. So I'm like, I'm partial awake.
Right.
And
So you're in
I
this pseudo, you don't say hypnosis and you don't say meditative, but you're in that middle brainwave activities, kind of in that,
said,
whatever
yeah,
that
there's a
semi-lucid
word for that.
state.
There's a word for that state of mind. I just forgot what the word is. There's a
There's a
before you
sleep
wake up.
paralysis. There's
Not
sleep
really a
paralysis, but
paralysis.
then there's like the beta, right? The beta waves change or something.
Yeah,
One
not
of
the paralysis
something.
thing, but it was
Right.
there's a certain word for it, but scientifically I don't remember what that was. But I know there's two words. One for when you're about to go to sleep and then you're in that state of about to go to sleep, and then there's one where you're about to wake up but you're not quite awake and you're half in and half out. That's the state of that I was in that moment. That's the very first time I remember that state. And sure enough, I see coming at me like from afar an angel coming like closer and closer, but it was in the ceiling. So it's kind of like a screen TV in the ceiling. That's how I can explain it. And I'm watching like this screen TV in the ceiling of my room because there's a corner.
So
And
it
then
wasn't
it's
actually an entity coming physically down toward you. It just looked like it was getting bigger on the screen,
Yep,
on the ceiling.
on the screen. She wasn't coming down to the ground. She was not down. She was up there. And then you can
Okay.
see like the little specks, like stars. I assumed they were stars. There were
Yeah.
specks.
Yeah.
And then I saw her outfit. It was like a light blue color, but it was flowing, like as if the wind was kind of like flowing, blowing at her outfit. So she's coming in. She's a like a goddess type, where we would think it's a goddess person. So comes in. She tells me her name, and her name is Samanthian. And she comes in, and so it's short for basically long for Samantha, right? Samanthian. She comes in. She has like the blonde hair. You can see her eyes. I didn't see it was blue, but I saw it was very light. And then her skin was
Almost
just
like
like
that clear, like, you know how clear
almost like a
blue, it's like a
clear,
clearish color?
light blue, but clear,
Yeah.
very light. And her outfit was like a very light color, light blue, flowing in the space, or I should say space or universe. Comes in and then
It sounds
she
like a
talks.
star seed.
Yeah, she comes and she talks, and then she talks in a universal light language. So I thought it was English because to me, I didn't know what English was. It
Right,
was a
and,
foreign
like,
language.
you understand it, so you're just whatever it is, you're understanding because it's telepathic in some kind of energetic
Yeah,
sense.
it's telepathic because her mouth wasn't moving. So, and I remember seeing her talking to me, but then she's not mouth moving. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm hearing something. She's saying, telling me something. She says it in a light language to me. And as I think about it later, when I grew older, I knew it was not English. It felt like English, but it wasn't English because it
Right,
was
it was
only
just
English
familiar
to
to
me.
you, or you just understood it, I
I
guess
just
is the best way
understood
to.
it. I just understood it, but it definitely wasn't English when I think about it when I got older. So now she comes and then she talks a little bit and then she left me with a gift in my hand and it felt so real that when I got up, I felt like it was there. And I grabbed it. She gave me the gift. I grabbed it and then I hold my hand out like this, grabbed it while I was sleeping on the in my bed and there was nothing on this side. So I opened my hands, grabbed it, and then pulled it in, pulled it to my chest, which I have no clue why I did that. It was automatic. And then when I got up, I felt it in my hand, but then I opened it and it wasn't there, but I felt it there. So it was like kind of like solidly there almost. And then, anyways, she started going backwards and then gone.
What
Uh,
do you remember what was said or what was communicated? Are you able to share that, or is that personal?
That's personal to me, so I won't share that, but it was a very,
It was
how
the
can
right
I
thing to say to you at the right time at in that age
yeah.
of time.
Yes, it was I'll just say that basically the basic overarching message is you kinda like you have a purpose and this is your purpose, and then boom, here's the gift and go, and then she's gone, right? And she's gone, but she's like flowing and then gone and disappears into the ceiling. The ceiling turns back to ceiling color, paint, like the normal ceiling. And then the darkness is just like it goes out into like almost like a portal closing in and then gone. And so by talking like this, it almost sounds like it's in a movie, right? But for me, it was like, wow. And then when I see it in the movies, I'm like, wow. In that kind of essence. And I'm like, okay,
I
you
know
know,
exactly what you mean. You see something and like the hairs in your arm stick up because it's eerily familiar, like you did experience that.
yeah, you get the goosebumps and you're like, okay, yeah, someone's portraying it just like how I saw it. So
And it happens after the fact when you have experiences, when you're not trusting
oh
or
yeah, it's
understanding
after the
what they are.
fact. And then when you talk about it, people are like, "Oh yeah, it looks just like it's just like sounds like just like this one movie that I saw." And I'm like, "Yeah, because the movie is portraying exactly what people's experiences could be or has been."
There's a reason art is the way art is. I mean, the art is the tap into that side of it because it's really not
Exactly.
the science side. It's really the energy, whatever the other side is.
Yes,
The muse.
because I believe, yeah, and to add to that, I believe that science came from the imagination and art. So, and it's a good thing because it then balances each other, and there is a need for both. There is a need for both. One
Yeah, it's
can't
very
think.
interesting because there are some arguments that where people create the ideas, and then there's the argument that all the ideas are there, and it's
Hmm.
just that correct antenna at the right time and the right turn to the right station picks up that idea.
Yeah, all
And
from a shamanic standpoint, I'll say it's both. There, there's
yes,
ideas that are there, and then there's ideas that are created. So there's both.
yes,
There's
and then
no
they're
one,
added to that collective over time. So they're kind of added to that record of the universe to be found again,
right? Right.
discovered again, maybe by another emergent consciousness, by another reality, simulation reality, for example. I mean,
Mhm.
it's interesting because I spoke with Bobby Azarian recently, and consciousness to me with what I've
Mhm.
experienced, it makes me almost defiant to what the human understanding of it is. It's backwards. To me, it's all emergent, and it's like I never feel top down. I haven't felt God down. I feel the hierarchy was created out of family, from father, mother, child. That's
Uh-huh.
really how I interpret the general religion in the
Mhm.
way that people do, because that's the best way to the good, God is the good in every situation. It's not a thing, it's a concept in my opinion. So I
Mhm.
feel like it's emergent, and the God actually came out of the universal consciousness. And that's a whole other thing down the road, but I was curious if you had flirt with a little bit of that part with what you've experienced, because yours is so intuitive. I would find it challenging with the intuition you have to not accept, but make it challenging to integrate the science part or the philosophical part of it with the feel of it.
I would say that it's not challenging at all. It's actually easier because I can see, okay, this is why they do that, which is this is why they say that. So therefore I understand why. So I wouldn't
That makes sense.
yeah, so I wouldn't be challenged. I wouldn't like disagree with it. I would just like, yeah, that's true. But there's this other piece that could be missing. So that's
Right.
how I would
Well, like,
say.
it's like part of the whole, right? I mean, it doesn't just because you think you have an answer doesn't mean it's a complete answer.
No, it's not. There's
And
always
life's
two
just one
sides.
giant equation, and the more data we get in the front of it, the more accurate the equation becomes, I guess, over time.
Yeah, you would be limited to say that there is only one answer or one thing that is correct. You would be limited
Yeah.
in that
Yeah, it's
way.
almost like you have the journey and or what is it? Truth and fact. Fact could be the answer, but journey's the way to get there. And you
Right,
can get there many different ways, and that's the purpose part, is how
right.
meaningful it is to get to the answer that we want.
Yes. And then what vibration are you operating at as a soul and person, or that you choose to operate in, that will give you the experiences to get there? And what is there, right?
Yeah, what is there, right?
Yes.
So
And
oh, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say that most people will ask me, what is my purpose? Or what is the purpose, right, for me? And this is the question I always get all the time because they're trying to look for a purpose. And I said, you know what? The purpose is what are you doing? What is your activities on a daily basis? That is your purpose.
Be the change you want to see in the world if you want change, right?
If
Do
you
the
want change,
act.
then maybe
Live
that's your
your life
purpose.
the way you
Then
want it
maybe
to
that's
be.
your purpose is to create change. But if you want to be a superstar, then what kind of activities are you doing to be a superstar? Of what? And
Right.
are you feeling it? Right? Or what is the intention behind that? Is your intention really to do this thing, whatever activity that you're doing, getting to where you want to go or not?
Absolutely. So, before I we had gotten together, I have had a crazy busy month.
Okay.
Probably actually since no, it's been the last 20 days have been just off the charts crazy for me. So, you connected, and generally I don't say yes to requests. I'm not going to lie. However,
Yeah.
since the 9th of July, I've decided to start saying yes as much as I possibly can. So I looked you up, and I saw you had some videos up on your website, and I saw the one with the 3 cards, and I'm like, "I'll do that one, that's easy. I choose 3." And you go through the thing, and obviously 1 and 2, they certainly resonate, all 3 resonate in some way. But the
Uh-huh.
3 was very interesting for me because it happened to be the one where I need help,
Mm.
and I need to ask for help, and my ego's in the way, and I think I'm very much in that position, because I'm trying to make this thing bigger. I have a lot of content, but I have 0 marketing. I never pursued it from any kind of monetization standpoint, but
Mm.
I fear letting go of what I've created to a stranger who may misuse it, may misrepresent it, whether intentionally or not, it doesn't even matter. It's an absolute self-control thing. So I found that interesting that I chose the one that what did resonate most with me. So thank you for having that reading.
Yeah,
Um,
you're welcome.
so tell me about how you got into the psychic medium part and the tarot part. What how
So
did that
I
become a
didn't get
natural
into
transition?
it. I didn't get into it. It got into me.
I know what
So
you mean.
I would say that with shamanism, I was probably one of the biggest rebellers of ever becoming a shaman when I was a young teenager. I told my mom that I would never be a shaman, that that's not what I want to do. And that I'm not going to do animism. I'm not going to sacrifice animals, and it's too much work, all that stuff. And my grandma, when I was about 5, I was actually interested in shamanism when I was about 5. I was interested in, I don't even know about shamanism, that word, right? But in my language, because shamanism could be anything in the English word, but in my language, Nenggai is what it's called. And meaning that you are a shaman. I asked her, "What do you see behind that veil, Grandma?" Because when you're a shaman, you wear a veil of whatever color. It could be white, black, red, yellow. But in the ancient days, they always wore either the red or the black ones. Those were the more common ones. After this was after the 5,000 years. This is like 200 years in. They've lost track of all the other ones. Only the red and the black veils that we would wear to cover it while we are channeling or while we are doing trance. So I asked her when she stopped, when she got done and completed one of her conducting her shaman rituals and trancing to for soul retrievals. And she stopped and then she was resting. And I said, "Grandma, what do you see behind that veil?" And she would tell me, she starts laughing and she's like, what do you want to know? And she said, "All I see is flowers." And I said, "Really? I wonder what I can see under there." And she said, "You want to try?" And then so she gave it to me. I wore it, covered my face with a black veil, and I was like, you're just playing around with me, Grandma. I don't see anything. It's black." And she's like, "You funny. You'll see it someday." And
You'll get
then
it, right. It'll
yeah,
get
and
there.
then you'll get it someday. And then after that, she told me that she would see things like a TV and like watching the TV. She would point it to the TV. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I was like, "I wonder if I'll ever see that." And she's like, "You dummy, you'll see it someday." And then after that point, at about teenage time, I was like telling my mom, "I'm never going to do this stuff. I'm never going to do animal sacrifice," which I really don't do now, but there's a different way of doing things that my guides came in. So I end up not doing animal sacrifices. Maybe once in a long while, I'll do it if it's very necessary for shamanic work. But otherwise, it's using rocks, stones, figurines for other ways how to conduct the spiritual or
Representations
soul,
of and things like that.
yeah, representations of the soul retrieval. So I rebelled in doing that, and then sure enough, my mom says, "You know what? Someday you'll learn, you'll know, because I know you're going to be one." You will be one someday, and it's going to be a different one, but you're going to have to accept it. And I said, "Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens." I wasn't a really big rebeller at that point, but if it came to shamanism, because I felt like
Yeah,
I was not being accepted
right.
racially, right? I felt like I was trying
Yeah,
to
I
fit
mean,
in.
certainly in that time, in that era, for sure. Certainly.
Yeah, that was like, late 80s, 90s, right? And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna do this stuff. I don't know what I'm gonna do." And she goes, "Yes, you will. You'll do it." And I said, "Well, okay." Well, I start laughing. I was like, "Okay, well, let's see." And then later on, sure enough, at 28, after I got married, very shortly after I got married, then I went through a whole trauma, family trauma, and the next day, literally, I'm like taken into this mode of channeling. I'm getting spoken through. So, for example, it was very strong, as if we call it Shi Yi. Okay, so Shi Yi is like one of the
Sounds like
Hmong.
1,000 voices in my head. That's what it sounds like. I don't have it filtered. It's really weird.
Yeah. So for me, it was one voice. and it came in and it spoke through me and I spoke it. So, and they were like, everybody was like, oh my God, what's going on? And then here's me
Did your
trancing.
voice change? May I ask, did you
No,
have any physical changes?
voice did not change. Voice is my voice, but the tone change, and it goes either higher
Mhm.
or lower. But that's like deep channeling right with the spirit of that. But if you're not doing that, you're doing like a lighter channeling, and you can control it. It's not going to be that crazy. But that was the very first time that it came, so I couldn't control it, and it came in very very strong. So I felt it in my body and my throat, and
So that was at
that's usually
28, you had this first channeling experience?
first channeling experience. Body, also vibration experience, on its own without, let's say, usually you'll need another master shaman or sifu shaman to help you and invigorate you with gong and, like, opening kundalini type of thing.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
your
you do
inner.
the chakra meditation, you do guided meditations, you do bowl, frequencies, things like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the
you're
different.
supposed to do all that before you can even do the vibration. But sure enough, after that trauma, boom, the next day, it's literally the next day, it's just everything just happened. So I went back after that day. I went back to the 2-year-old experience, and I said, "This is what she meant." So
Interesting.
that's what
So,
happened.
so you have this first experience. Now the floodgates open.
Yeah.
How would you explain your specific, I'll say gifts, let's say traits that you have. Gifts make it sound like you've obviously been gifted with this, but to say that you're gifted makes it just makes it a comparatively weird thing with other people. It's not better. It's just different, right? So
Yeah.
how were you gifted these traits? And which traits would you say you have? You mentioned channeling, um, other things like precognitive things. What types of
Yeah.
things would you say you're able
So
to experience?
almost every one of the psychic abilities, I would say I have. So the clairs, all the clairs, claircognizant,
Clairvoyance and the
clairvoyant, clairaudient,
yep,
all the clairs.
audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can do all the clairs.
Telekinesis as well. Physical movement at all, or
Telekinesis, telekinesis, I can to a certain extent. Okay, to a certain
I
extent.
can understand that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the mind is a very powerful thing. And
Mhm.
very interesting that you have, so you have all the clairs, the telekinesis, things like that. Now, that's pretty impressive. That's an amazing thing. And this has all happened since that time, and now you've made a practice, and not, I hate to say practice, but made a purpose out of it, right?
It is a practice, and I resisted it at first. I didn't want to quit my corporate job. And so but then I was bombarded by information as I went to my corporate job every single day, every morning. I couldn't get away from do this, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. Here's all the information, download, download, download. And I couldn't get away from that completely. It's like I'm trying to do my work here at corporate, typing on my computer, analyzing stuff, numbers, financial things, because I was in the financial area and accounting. So I was analyzing, and here comes some information. I cannot work. But I'm still trying to hold on, and do some things. And I'm like,
Right.
hold on, let me do this first, and then you wait for a little bit. And then let me get home, and then I'll do this thing. I'll do meditation, I'll do this thing. I'll write down in my journals of whatever's going on. Okay. And then they're holding off, and then I get home, a ton of downloads just come. I zoom right to my altar. And then I have to put my family. I have 3 kids at that time. Put my family aside, and I say, you guys have to hold on. You guys have you make dinner, to my husband. You make dinner. Kids have, I'll take care of them after. And I'm zooming in every single day for the next 10 years or so, focus, all on that, all on that.
That
I
sounds
can't get away.
burdensome.
I can't get away. I'm trying to get away, do other things. I'm pulled back all the time. And it's like in my head, pulled back to do this work, to do this work. And when I say I can't get away, it's not like I could choose to get away. I could choose to be like, okay, no, I'm not going to download
It
anything
doesn't
else.
get away from you.
But it
It
doesn't get
doesn't
away
get
from
away
me.
from
So
you.
I have to do it. And then it's like, okay, now you got to go and heal these people. Now you got to go and do this.
Yeah,
So you're
aversion
being,
therapy is not the way to go with these things because it chases you down.
yes. It's almost like it's trying to guide me to get there, to a place where I am able to embody the teachings because they're downloaded to me through, I don't know how. It's a astrological type of sign or connection in the soul that's connected, coded to do that. Um, and so,
So yeah, so let's talk about let's go starseed, let's go astrological. I listened to another one of your YouTube videos. I like I said, I had an experience. It knocked me conscious. I went down the rabbit holes. I've done past life regressions. I've done meditations. I've done a lot, everything short of actual psychedelics. I've not done a shamanic like ayahuasca, which is it is on the ledger. I just have not had the courage or the means to do it in a way that I trust that. I
mm,
get enough without that. You know what I mean? But go ahead, please.
yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that because
Okay,
in
well,
the
let's do
monk,
that before we continue. Yes, please.
yeah, in the monk tradition, shamanically, you are brought to that level without psychedelics. Okay. So you're supposed to be
Breathing and
brought
things like that.
naturally, yeah, brought naturally there without any drugs, without any mushrooms, any plants or herbs. You can go there to that state of mind, but in a benevolent way where you are led by spirit.
Right, and that makes sense. So have you had those types of experiences in a lucid way? And
Oh,
would you have you ever compared your experiences to someone who's done it chemically and you've matched up in that way? I'm just out of that.
yes. So I helped the people that has done it chemically, right? Well, we could say chemically, but it's herbs. But it's
Well,
still
right. I
a,
mean, it is through just chemicals, not obviously not. It's
yeah,
naturally, it's
it's a
herb based.
natural herb, yeah, a natural herb that causes them to have the psychic or
And I would assume it's
psychological.
the DMT, the tryptamide DMT piece
So
that has that in it.
yes, so I've helped people that have done that before, and they're like, "I'm trying to get there, but why do I always have to use it?" I thought if I use it, my depression, anxiety, and stress would get better, but they gotten worse. And I said, you know what? You're supposed to get there naturally without the psychedelics, without the mushrooms, without all that stuff to see what you want to see, to be in a dimension where you want to be spiritually or energetically. You don't need that. You have to just be able to train your brain and basically do a transformation in your brain to be able to get there. And you also have to have an open door for spirit guidance to come in. And
That's
that's,
really important. That makes a lot of sense in this way because if you do it that way, then you are aligning with the energy. If you do it chemically, the chemicals are taking over regardless of whether you're ready or not ready to hear whatever the information that you're going to get. So you're probably going to be less receptive to what you may experience. You may fight it more. It won't take. And that's why you have to have the recurrence to your point in
yes,
that.
because he is this guy that I specifically was helping. He's taken it for probably at least 5 to 10 years. I don't remember which one, but it was between that time. So it could be 7, 8. But it was a long time period of time, and he keeps doing it. So it became like a drug, like type of
It does,
drug thing.
it's, it's funny. They say not habit forming. But if you take it daily, if you take it weekly, it is a habit. It is a
It is.
habit. Like even I do medical cannabis, and if I take it regularly, it is called chronic for a reason. I mean, it's got a nickname.
Yes.
It is a habit regardless of whether it's like you can stop, and just because you don't have the withdrawals doesn't mean it's not habit forming.
Yeah. And your body's going to get used to it and it's not going to work as well or at all
Always, yeah.
after a certain
The
period of
tolerance does
time.
build up over time.
Yep. Too much of anything, someone said this before, too much of anything will kill you, right?
So thank you for sharing that, because I did want to compare different shamanic traditions. Yours would
Mm-hmm.
be through probably the breathing and the meditation and the things like that. You've got, in South America, you would probably go through the Amazon forest, and that's how those shaman found the different plants and things. And I was curious, the Celtic shaman, are you familiar with the Celtic shaman, how similar and different you might have experienced your
Celtic,
spirituality?
I would say that I don't want to speak to the Celtic shamans that are that they've always done it, but I have and I can look into what they have done. I feel like they're more animistic in a sense.
Okay.
So they rely on the animal spirits as well as their ancestral spirits and ancestral gods and goddesses as well. So
That
they're
sounds very
also
Native American tradition as well,
yeah, very
with an
native as
animal spirit.
well. And also their gods and goddesses do have to come through too, just like the Hmong tradition. We don't think about breathing at all. Actually, that's more like the yoga tradition where you're thinking about breathing and there is some breathing, but it's not like this is what you focus on
No, it's
first.
more trans like to induce that state, right? To induce that transient state. It's
No,
not
it's
to get
nothing
you
at all
like
like that.
right.
It's nothing at all. It's when how a rising shaman starts, like the very newbie shaman, is they've gone through either shamanic illnesses for years, have no idea that it's shamanic illness. They just don't understand what's going on with the ailments that are in the body. Either that or they go through a ton of I see this or I'm seeing this spirit, I'm seeing these ghosts, I feel this stuff, I'm feeling a dark shadow all the time, or I'm seeing this shadow cross by me or cross in the room somewhere. So they're seeing this stuff all the time in their home, right, in their home, and they don't understand if that is an illness, a spiritual illness. And then one day or
Can you
another
explain
day,
what that means? What is a spirit? How is that a spirit? Not how is it a spiritual illness, but can you explain what that means in that context?
yeah, when I say spiritual illness, it's anything that causes the soul to be imbalanced. So if your
Oh,
soul
so
is in,
so having these visions is an imbalance of the soul.
if the visions are causing you fear, anxiety,
Right.
stress,
If your interpretation of them are in a darker
negative,
contrast than light.
yeah, in a
Okay,
negative
makes
way.
total okay.
Yeah. But if you're feeling, oh, it's good. I'm seeing this angel in front of my, on the ceiling, and I feel good about it. Oh, she gave me, I feel good about this. And you just have an intuitive feeling that it's good, then it's not an imbalance. It's more like, oh, it's something more that you need to explore, right? But
Right.
if you're
Right. So
feeling shadow,
what if your visions are of dark events and you don't understand those?
yeah, if your visions are more dark events, that means there's something that's very imbalanced in the soul, almost like your soul is being crossed or crisscrossed, cross paths with a dark entity or dark entities, and that they're not letting you go. So that's why you keep seeing these dark entities and they're trying to overtake you or the soul, basically control the soul. And then you have this feeling of the person might have the feeling of, oh, should I listen to this entity? Should I listen to that? Oh, they're telling me to go do this, but it's negative. Should I do that? So you're being drawn, but in a negative way.
So I'm curious about that, because I was one I always wrestle with that, because I wonder if it is an entity cross, or the way one perceives the world. If one perceives the world from their experience and their upbringing in a judgmental, disgust, negative connotation, like how they want to change the world, that's how, like, it's that authoritative. Let me put it this way. I'm German. I'm a first
Yep.
generation German American. So you can
Okay.
understand
Hmm.
the upbringing that similar to your, I would assume it would be very similar to your upbringing, in that strict structural, I would think, in some kind of way, right? There would be
Yep.
some kind of structure there.
I understand you.
As, right.
So
And
you're
especially
saying what
coming to
comes
America for the
first?
first. Sorry, go ahead.
you're you're saying your question is what comes first, the negativity
Right,
or the
right,
person being negative and just judging themselves or judging the world negative. Well, I'll
right.
tell you this. From my experience and from what I've seen on this other side of things, like the spiritual side is basically it's always the entities that come first. Now, mind you, if it's a trauma experience, then it was brought upon you through the entity, through your parents, or through whoever traumatized you. Then it looks like, oh, it's that person that did it to me. That person did something to me. So
Right,
now I'm
so
going to
it could
paint
be
the
the
world.
spirit of those things, not actually obviously personified that in someone who influenced your life. I'll
Yeah,
just put it
so
that way.
they, yeah, so came through them to you. So through their thoughts to you. And then now you're getting a part of that. And that's also a generational type of trauma, right? Because it was from one to the other in the family. Now it's from external person, then it's not generational, but it can lead to that generation being traumatized. Because if someone outside, let's say, for example, did something to your father and your father got, let's say, beat by some external person, army guy, I don't know, whoever, right? Comes home,
Absolutely,
now
yeah.
beats you, and you're getting the beating, then therefore you are traumatized, but he is too, and that other
Right,
person so it kind of went down a domino
right,
effect.
right. So
And
it
what
makes
happened?
total sense that it would sound like so if I may just kind of interpret it, I'm trying once again, I try to simplify things as much as possible, only because these are very confusing times, very complex terms. They're very ethereal too. They're there, but they're not always set in stone because there's some just there's some fluidity to it.
Yeah,
You're speaking of the trauma. It's always the spirit of whatever traumatized to create that perception of the world that's not positive. That would make sense that it's
yeah,
still an entity, but it is the trauma or that
but it's
whatever
the
it is that you experience that would have you molded in that perception of the world.
yes, because it's the person that decided to take on that personality or that to decided to listen. Let's just say this. The person decided to listen to that negative thought from whoever entity and did what they did. But if they can just decide not to and say, hey, I'm not listening to you, because
Right.
that's where our world needs to go is I'm not listening to you, negativity. I'm going to do this instead. Then no trauma.
It
Does
makes
that make
that's
sense?
understandable, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So what
And
comes first?
so, for
Are
example,
the
in my case, I had my my parents are amazing. They are
Mhm.
still alive. They what they went through, I wouldn't want to imagine it. I mean, my mother was born in my mother's father was a German soldier in World War
Mhm.
II. And so my mom was born under Hitler, and then when that happened, when that crumbled, then East Germany went under Russia. So then she lived under
Mm.
Stalin for a bit, and then they
Okay.
escaped East Germany, and then they came to the United States. And so she's been under Hitler, Stalin, and Eisenhower, which is just absolutely amazing.
That is
I
amazing.
am blessed to be here. My father was born in Hamburg, walked hand in hand with his family from Hamburg to Berlin, 120 miles to avoid bombs. One of
Mm.
his, one of his siblings passed from malnutrition on the way. I can only
Mm.
imagine. I mean, they literally worked for food after the war. It's just unbelievable how he came here all on his own, met my mother here. I'm blessed. I'm just
Yeah.
absolutely blessed here. So
I think
I just wanted
we
wanted the best for me. With
yes,
that,
we are all blessed to be here. Yes, we are. I'll just
right,
say we are, you and I, from what you just said right there, and from my parents' journey crossing the Mekong River and crossing over all the way from Laos to Thailand on foot, meeting all these things on the way, and getting here to the US, it's just an amazing for all the elders that gone through that. Yes.
it is, and I've met so many stories that of just amazing people. Now, with
Yeah.
that comes some things. It's like we want to make sure you integrate right, and you want to make sure you assimilate. You want to make sure that you're doing things right. You know, you're
Mhm.
representing us. We're still German, so we're a little structured. But I was a free flowing guy, so I had a little challenges with that. But I wasn't a bad kid. I just didn't understand. I was a questioner. I was like annoying in that way. But
Oh.
I had that. But then I also had actually a trauma experience where I had a near death experience and out of body
Mhm.
during that near death when I was 13, and
Mm.
nothing really happened until about 40 for me. So it was
Mhm.
like I went, and that was through a meditation. So
Yeah.
let's circle back. We want to get to this state that other herbs can get you to. We'd like to do that without that. And
Yeah.
you can show people how to get there.
Yes. You can get there
So that would be
without
one
it.
of your that would be a great skill. That would be something you should showcase or something you should feature as a skill. Because imagine all the people who can't, for example, they can't afford to fly to Chile or Peru or
Mhm.
Venezuela and do all the different shamanic rituals, legally
Mhm.
and the actual way. That would be something that would be really interesting that you should showcase or feature.
Yes. The only thing is that it's only some people, depending on where your vibration is. I always go back to the vibration.
Right.
We have to
Yeah, they have to
warm
prepare for
up.
that for sure.
Yeah, you have to be warmed up to that type of state to
Right.
trance. And in
And
order to
maybe there's a
trance,
whole training course of that though. There'd be a step-by-step kind of thing where you would
yes,
have to. I would think there would be metrics to face to get to that next, like almost like jujitsu, where you have your different color belts, right? You get different.
yes, yes. And I actually have that course.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Tell us about it. So tell me about this course.
So the course kind of lays out where you are. So it's a basically spiritual life coaching and shamanic training course in together, put together. Why? Because the person always needs to, we always need to take a look. I call it a spiritual diagnosis to diagnose you where you're at the time that you come into the course, to see what type of traumas that you've had. Was it prenatal? Was it, after you got born? Was it life events that had caused these traumas in your life that has is stopping you from really being your highest and best self? Whether it's in here or whether it's physically, like if somebody's like a sprinter and they want to sprint farther, what's stopping you from actually doing all these things more miraculously, in a way to yourself that you can see, okay, yeah, I could do this. And so we look at all the traumas that's going on with you, taking you through the traumas from even like the different areas of your life too, not just is it generational, but what is the area specifically, relationship, career, is it money problems or money issues that's going on in your head, that your mindset, or is it more of a health thing that's going on? Were you born with a health thing, or did it happen afterwards? And why did it do that? So you get all the whys, and what's happening to you, and why you weren't able to accomplish some of these things, right? So then you get through all that trauma stuff, but in the meantime, I also inject in each of those weeks that we go through the trauma stuff to releasing those blockages. But in the meantime, you're also learning about spirits, guiding spirits. Who are your spirits? Do you have any spirit guides? If you do, who are they? What do they look like? Their spirit guides could be so vast, right? It's not just limited to like Jesus and Buddha and Mother Mary, though they are the masters of the ascended ones, but there's also other spirit guidance in within your ancestor circle, right? And then
Can
there's
I ask you
also
a question
animals.
about the Jesus Buddha piece? Can I ask real quick just
Yeah.
on that? Is
Oh
it
yeah.
is it the personification Jesus, or is it a spirit? Is it a spirit inside of whatever? The spirit
Spirit of
of, right?
Spirit
Okay.
of Jesus, Yeshua. Yes.
Okay. Because I actually have an issue with the personification because I don't know if Jesus was actually a real human being yet. I'm still
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah.
But I do
Some
know the
people question.
spirit exists. I
Yes,
do know the
the
spirit exists,
spirit
and I
does
do know that
exist.
Buddha was pre-existing of that. So
Yeah, the spirit exists because why? I believe in that. Now, if someone was to tell me, "Hey, you need to believe in like, so and so religion," right? of Jesus being on the cross. And I would say no, because he doesn't want to be on the cross. He actually wants to be freed from the cross. So why do you guys show him on the cross? This could be a controversial type of thing, but Jesus
Right.
came
And
to
I'm
me and
no,
said
thank you for
that.
bringing that up. It's very important. We're here to be controversial because this is the expansion of the idea. This doesn't mean it doesn't mean the other it'll either chip away at the other idea in a merit way or it'll solidify the idea in a merit way. That's
Right.
that's that's why you bring this up. So please continue on this. No, so
Yeah,
you're speaking of the spirit of Jesus. He wants to be free and not be on the cross. And here we
he
are,
does not.
his all suffering, right? It's all about his
Yeah,
suffering, not his goodness.
yeah. And the suffering is not really the cross itself. The suffering is the whoever has put on his back the suffering. He's carrying the suffering basically because he keeps being shown on the cross. Reminded of that story, whoever brought that story up and made that, the story, even though it could or couldn't be real, may or
It
may
was
not be
Peter or
real.
Paul. I forget which one. Which one wrote that story.
I don't know the story. I just know that Jesus came to me and said that to me. So I'm repeating what he said to me. So, and I'm not a churchgoer either. So, I just know what the spirit brought to me. And so he
Absolutely.
basically just reiterated that he doesn't like to be on the cross, for me to spread the this type of message out to everybody, whether they are whatever religion they are choosing to be, but he doesn't like to be seen on the cross or put at places of worship on the cross, because that's basically, even if it was real or not real, now it's real.
That's
Now it's
very
real because he's
interesting.
carrying that.
So my girlfriend, I love her and I think it's beautiful. She has a whole cross collection. We actually have a room where we have 30 or 40, maybe 50 crosses in the room. And some of them are absolutely stunning. And some of them, I think, have a Jesus figure on some of them.
Hmm.
And now I'm going to have a conversation with her that Jesus doesn't want to be on that. We're going to have to take those
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Now
That's
I'll say
interesting.
that
I see a fight ahead.
now I'll also say that since we're on the cross and Jesus type of thing subject, the cross by itself can be a positive or negative symbol by itself, okay? So can be positive or negative, depending on what you do with that cross symbol. But Jesus being on the cross and nailed to it, he doesn't want to be on there.
And bleeding. And, I mean, it's like all of it, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and in the close, the
The
note.
thorn crown, obviously, and
Yeah.
all that,
Yeah, so he doesn't want to be symbolized as that, and he's expressed it very vividly to me, clearly to me. As one of the days I was meditating, and then Zoom, he just comes in. I'm like, wow, I've never seen him in
Hey,
this
what are you
light.
doing here? Jesus, what are you doing here? I get it.
So
I totally understand that for sure.
yeah, and you don't have to go to a religious place to see Jesus. I mean, I saw
No.
him and I met him when I was about 6 years old, or I think I was 6 or 4 years old. I don't remember either one. But when I was 6 or 4, he came into a dream to me and showed me basically the afterlife of what you would, if whoever sins goes here, whoever doesn't sin goes there. So I have the whole spiel on my YouTube channel, but I met Jesus at
Really?
that young age
Wow,
through a
interesting.
dream. Yeah.
So there is a path that if you live your life one way, you go away and go a different way if you don't. So let me ask that because I think I know. See, to me, that wouldn't be a heaven hell thing. To me, that
No.
would be a karmic reliving till you get it right. So it'd almost
Yeah.
be like the path. If you chose poorly in your current life, then you have to redo. You get a do over, but not you don't get a do over. You have to do over because you got to get it right. And
Yeah.
if you
If
do live it right, the other path is the one where okay, cool, you've done it right. There's a level up of some sort,
Yeah. So there's three paths.
a
There's
transcendence maybe.
Yeah. So actually there's four. So there's There's the one where you do really bad and you don't get to come back and relive a life because you get to go and be the dark entity side. There's that one.
Okay.
And then
That's
there's
captured at that point, and you basically have already been captured. You're just going to live that part out. I mean, you're probably unable to get away, escape that in a
the
lot of ways.
energy, the energy there is like going to be the energy against the good, basically.
That would be like possessions, courtings, things like that. Those types of courting energies and those types of situations.
I just call it you're part of the negative dark energies. You can never become to the light again. That soul, that part of the soul. Okay.
That soul, that part.
Yeah, that type of soul will is captured basically, unless something miraculously happens in the spiritual dimension and it somehow becomes or is able to escape it. But then there's the other one, the other portion where if you do good, then you get to go to good. You get to go to the place where there's flowers and
Okay,
hills and
you get that
green,
one right. So you got those
right?
two, and then you've got these two middle ones. So tell me about these two middle ones. I'm curious how
And
those.
then there's one where you're just wondering, because it never got to the place where you are either or, and this is the wandering
Does that
spirit.
explain ghosts on Earth, possibly, and spirit
That
entities on
explains
Earth?
ghosts on earth or in homes that are still stuck on land or home and still in possession of a material place, utilizes a material place as their vessel or as their place of being.
Connected
Uh,
to an object, or they're connected to to a property or a territory, things
exactly.
like that.
Yep, yep. And
Many
then
times,
there's
the argument would be many times it would be whatever the trauma was that ended their life would be the imprint in some weird way,
yes, yes.
in some way.
Yep. And
Loosely
then the
speaking,
fourth
of course. I
and then the fourth one is they have elevated so high as a human being or animal. It could be an animal too. They've elevated so far along in their intelligence on Earth that when they pass on, they're going to be able to either one be energy of good, like rainbow type, okay, in the universe.
like, could it be purple or an indigo mist by any chance?
They're part of the energy system, okay,
Yeah,
which
just
is a
curious.
good, the good energy system. But we say it's good to us as a human, but it's actually neutral, so they're not good or bad, but they're also not dark, okay. So they're part of the
Well,
energy
good and bad is
system.
contrast. Once again, good and bad is only contrast. You cannot know good unless it has to be met with the equal amount. It's like we
It
talk about
has to be
perfect.
yin and
Perfect's
yang.
impossible. Perfect is impossible because you can't experience the opposite of perfect. You would not
Yeah,
endure that to make it to understand what perfect could possibly be. You couldn't
yeah.
understand the contrast of it.
At least not at this point in time of our human life.
Right. Well, purity and other things, that's different than like perfection's a weird, just a different thing.
Yeah, and it's not going to be perfect. So they've elevated high enough where they could do that, be energy, or be another guidance, a guiding spirit that can come back and guide the conscious of mankind that is living. So there's your four.
Interesting. So I'm in that fourth one because I'll share a little bit. I had a past life regression. The first
Hmm.
life that I went to, I was a purple non-corporeal mist, and I was being
Okay.
pulled here. I'm that's what I
Mm,
experienced. I say it as lucidly as possible. Like that's what I saw. I remember saying it. I'll share the recording with you after because right when they go to the door where you are there, EMP comes in and the entire recording's useless. It picked up some kind of energy and I don't know what that is.
mm,
But my first life was a non-corporeal mist and I was being pulled here. And I remember a
hmm.
tear down the side of my eye and the guide asked, "Why are you coming here?" And I simply said, "They're making me." No idea why I said that, but it was just correct.
Mm,
So that was part of it. I've had other stuff, but it led me down a path of star seeds. And I'm going to shift a little
Mm.
bit because I heard you mention Palladians and some other pieces. Could you share with me your experience with your personal shamanic experiences and your understanding, your information about star seeds? We don't have to get in the whole belief thing, but obviously I would think if you're speaking of them, you're able to speak of them in a way that you understand them. So please share
Yeah.
any of that information because I'd love to delve into the individual ones as well, if I may.
Yeah, so my experience with the Pleiadians specifically. So again, one day I was just meditating. This is when I was still becoming a shaman. I was just kind of doing my meditations automatically. Didn't even know they were called meditations at the time. That was the English word.
Yeah, my
So
first meditations when I had my first vision, it was jarring. I didn't even know what I was doing.
yeah, so I'm just kind of going along with what the spirits. I call it my CEs or continuing education as I was doing. So I was in there, and then Zoom comes in. I see this thing come in, and then from the side, like a spacecraft looking thing, but it wasn't like how it's portrayed in the movies at all. It just comes in and boop, and then a blink of light, and then boom, they're there. And it was just daylight out. I was just in a meditation, not sleeping or anything. So then I get visited, and there's a guy and a gal, and I think there was a third person, but that one wasn't as vivid. So the gal has blonde hair. The guy has kind of like a gray blonde or ashy hair. Third one I think had darker hair, and then they both came in and they gave me channeled in, basically telepathically channeled in a message about the planet. And at the time, I was just like trying to jot down as much as I can about, basically they were giving me some downloads of how humans became humans and what's the contents of humans DNA wise, right? And because I wondered about that.
Interesting. So it's a seeded evolutionary jump. Is that the claim?
Yes,
Th-
something like
They
that.
they added a little seasoning to the human mix and it jumped. Is that
Oh
the
yes,
claim?
there was definitely seasonings, and
Yeah,
seasonings were not
that sounds
just
about right.
by the seasonings were not just the seasonings created by the Pleiadians or the Pleiades themselves in the different three planets that are together that I was shown, but it was also co-created by other ETs as well. And that was
You
the
remember
big
those names? Could you share those names if you have them by any chance?
um I remember one of them was Sirius, one of the other planets in the Pleiades area, but one of them I don't
Mhm.
remember right now. I
Yeah.
must have written it down
There's
somewhere.
Lycan, Syrian. Yeah, there's a couple and
Yeah,
okay.
Sirius was
Yeah,
the
so the
one.
Syrian's the one that my path crossed. It's very odd. I
Okay.
can't
Yeah.
It's very hard to explain. Like,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I would have to channel through to see some other details, but that's what
interesting.
I was told at that point in time. And I didn't even know what Siri was or what Sirius because I don't read books.
Right,
So I, I just never liked it reading when I was a kid, but I just read because I had to through college and everything.
right.
But then I'm not
I
like a
totally understand what you mean. I can do audiobooks and podcasts, but reading is a very challenging thing for me because I
Yeah,
get
I get
distracted very
actually
easily.
sleepy when I read other people's works. But if I write
There
it
you
and
go.
I'm writing creatively, then I'm fine.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, it must be energetic. It must invigorate you.
It it's a very energetic thing. So, anyways, I get downloaded all these names, and then I'm like, oh, this is very interesting. I wonder if Sirius is a real planet. And then later on, I go and I ask my more intellectual son, and he goes, yeah, that's a planet on this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I just got downloaded this name, and this is how the alignment goes. And then I kind of drew it out for him, and then he goes, okay, yeah, well, this is the alignment here. And I said, okay, that's interesting. So then I get to see,
Did you hear
who's all.
anything besides so with the sprinkling? There are a couple arguments that were made. Allegedly, there was a limit a cat made on the lifespan of the of the being that was initially created because there was initial rebellion. or
The cat?
there was some weird thing where initially the human was going to live longer and something was done genetically after to cap the lifespan to only 100 years where
I
they live
haven't looked into that yet. I haven't looked into that yet, but I just know that the cat has more souls or lives, soul wise too. So the contents of a cat soul wise is a bit much different from the human's
would you
contents.
say more complex or just different?
More complex, more complex in a way where it's the spiritually complex. But if we talk about intellectual complexity and energetic spiritual, for the human has less, but it's more complex in detail.
Right.
The cat has more, but it's not in that way
As
complex.
right, so there's it's just a different kind of complexity, right, with
It's
quantity
a
over
different kind
quality,
of
like, not quality,
complexity.
but so that
Hmm.
would
And
explain then why the cat would be in the Egyptian time would be a revered animal. I would assume there was some kind of spiritual connection and understanding of the cat's special spiritual connection in the world, almost like you've got animal, then you've got cat and the human, and there's almost like this way to connect them like a translator almost.
yeah, the cat just has a very susceptible, the reason being is the cat has a very susceptible, um, a very susceptible spirit soul, a soul that is very susceptible to other entities. I'll say it that way.
Yes, I
And that's
understand that.
why they're
Okay.
revered very well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So,
Hmm.
psychic medium readings, do you do medium readings as well?
Yeah, so I do medium readings. I connect with past loved ones, and mediate. If there is something that they didn't, complete, then we mediate and try to bring peace to that. So this is humans or animals as well. Um, it gets very interesting into that whole thing. I do past life regressions and take people through their different layers of past life trauma as well as this lifetime trauma as well. That's one layer, and then the other layers is the one I talked about right at the beginning, where was it, prenatal, was it after, was it life events, and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I do, and then trancing through they call it the axis mundi, but basically you go through this path and then you are led to different areas or different dimensions, multi dimensions, and different universes if it has to go to that point, depending on where that spirit of the soul went, that fragment of the soul, where did that go? And we go and retrieve that back. There's that part, and then there's also a part where you go and you call it back, where you're not actually going there but you're calling it back. So the shaman does this type of work. And then aside from that, just very planetary work as well. So earth, seismic, to very scientific things that one would think is very scientific, but on a spiritual level and energetic level, it's very spiritual. It's very
They're
intangible.
connected. It's not like one doesn't discount the other.
No,
It
the
just helps
the
explain it.
scientific
It
part,
just helps explain it.
yeah, the scientific part just helps, yeah, explains kind of in a more methodological way of what
Yeah,
that is.
procedural process kind of way.
Yeah,
Something easier
procedural,
to
but
digest step by step.
yeah,
Doesn't
yes,
make
but
it
with
whole, and it doesn't usually act that way. Come on, we're not in a vacuum here. It hardly acts the
the
way it's supposed to act.
yeah, so that's why there's some things that cannot be explained by science. Either one, they don't want to explain it, or two, they can't really explain it because there isn't a way to explain it, by method
Yet. Yet.
yet. Yet.
That's what
Now,
that's
if
why we're
if
it doesn't mean we
they
ever
get
will. It doesn't mean we ever will.
if they get together with someone that is very spiritual, now there's a possibility that that can be explained because perhaps the first science guy was very spiritual.
It's very interesting what I found in the science realm because what I experienced, you would you would probably take on a faith, and I have not. I've not taken on a faith. I've seen scientists who live their whole life scientifically, and then they experience some natural wonder, like
Uh-huh.
three breaks in a river, and they're like, the Holy Trinity, and then they fall on their knees and just like have some epiphany thing. I would love to think I could have that. I have none of that. I'm what they call anti-theist. That has nothing to do with my against the spirit and or the god or whatever. It's the human perception and the institutionalization of it and the way it's marketed and the way it's written and the way, what's been withheld from the pages, what was put in, all those things. Those are the questions. Those are the things that I am anti. It's the anti, you know, it's like anti-establishment in a way, because religion became establishment, and kind of corrupted in that way. It's not
Mm-hmm.
as fluid as you'd like it to be, or as so. I was curious your thoughts on the institutions that have come up over time. Sounds like they've got some stuff right, but it also sounds like they threw some stuff into.
Well, I would say that, no matter what anybody says or believes or anything, it will all come down to, what are you going to do on the day of your death? What are you going to do if you're sick? What are you going to reach for? Who are you going to ask for help? Mom, dad, God. Mom, dad, God. Depending on what your experience is it mom or dad, right? But it ends up being somebody of higher source for help. You pray for somebody of higher source for help. You're not praying to the institution for help. You're praying to that higher source for help. So these higher institutions, they only came to be because of power and authority and greed, whatever they want to call that, right? Because of control. That's my belief through the shamanic way that I was taught. But they can be in existence, but it all goes down to, on the day that you get sick, like very sick, or in the part where you're like on the edge and you can't go somewhere else, or there's somebody that's there, you're in danger somehow, right? Who is it that you call out for? It's always this higher source for help. When no one else is there, you end up, like you said, dropping to your knees, the guy, and say,
Yeah,
holy, you know,
yeah.
what is that? And it's a wonder,
And
right?
you
Because
let
it's a
go, right?
wonder. It becomes a wonder because of all our lifetimes we were shut out of the access to that information. So now we wonder, and now we are in doubt, or now we are in fear because of the control, right? If we didn't
Mhm.
have that control, if we had open access, then we wouldn't wonder, but then there wouldn't be as great of control.
Right.
Does that
And we
make sense?
know their control must exist for the people in control to stay in control.
The control has to exist, because if you listen to the music, the TV, the movies, everything out there, there is that frequency, right? And why do people do the things they do? Why do people think the things they think? Because of the waves that flow in. It's these intangible waves, right? And these
Mhm.
intangible waves that flow in.
Yeah.
And Mark, I'm not going to pick on you, but I see you drinking Monster.
Yes, I'm a neurotoxin away from like having a stroke. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
so I want to say this to help you going forward, right? To help you out. When you drink a can that says Monster, it actually, it's kind of like the cross that's put on Jesus.
You're giving me the guy who Yamamoto's water experiment, because
So
it's written
even
monsters
though,
going into the liquid, the
yeah,
frequency of monster is out, right?
not just the liquid itself, but the whole idea, the thought. If I'm drinking this name, then I must become this, right?
You associate yourself with it. I totally
You
understand that.
yeah, you associate yourself with that. Now, if you take
I
a
will
look
admit,
and
when
you're
I first saw Monster, no, I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw it, I said, "Oh my gosh, it's my drink." I think they named it after me. I don't think I followed it. No,
so there you go,
I'm just kidding. I'm just being
right?
glib. I'm just being glib. Yeah, that's a very
So
excellent point.
so it's a subconsciously, it's in your subconscious that if you drink this, you will become this monster. But in maybe in some people's head, a monster is somebody that's macho, that's, strong, that's not scared of anybody, that can scare people, and that
Right. And all of a sudden, your shoulders get up, and your back gets up, and your chest goes out, and you're like, "I'm gonna
and
get aggressive with people."
yeah, and then there's a reason in there that says, if I drink this, I am this. Therefore, if I take a look at you, Mark, right? If I take a look at the person that's drinking that drink, I'm saying to myself, there's something in them that wants to be hidden and does not want to come out. There's something sensitive there, and that's why they have to drink, or they feel like they are this type of drink. They have to drink this drink, or they have to eat this food in order
I can tell
to
you what the reason I got this one was it was a one on sale, and it was the only sugar-free one on sale.
I
Because I
know,
also
right?
have Red Bull whenever it so I get what you were absolutely, though, correct, though. Some people the people do associate with the whole Red Bull gives you wings, and the Monster, and the energy super minotaur. You're absolutely right. It's like a marketing thing where they just inundate you with that perception of you have to become the Mountain Dew guy, the crazy Mountain Dew guy who's drinking the Mountain Dew, on the mountaintop.
Yeah, because he
I
feels
totally understand
free.
it, though. It's an excellent message.
Yeah, feels
Oh,
free
sorry,
on
go
the
ahead.
mountain,
Go
right? So
ahead. Exactly. There it is.
yeah, so I mean, you can drink whatever drink you want, and you don't have to associate, right? But I'm just saying that spiritually, if let's say for example, if you drink it and you subconsciously know, oh yeah, this is not nothing to do with me, I'm just drinking because I know that the thing that's in the drink can help me this, then that's different from saying, oh yeah, like you're not conscious to that, and you're just like drinking it because you see the monster and you're like, okay, associating. That's a little bit different too.
Yeah.
So being
I'd
conscious.
like to say I'm the former, not the latter. I'm very conscientious about that kind of stuff because it was the only one that was in the fridge up here. Not gonna lie, I've got a little mini fridge up here, and I'm like, what am I gonna drink? I grabbed it. I'm like, I gotta wake up a little bit, and this is the only thing that's gonna give me just enough buzz to get through. Because I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah,
know, honestly, I wasn't sure that this conversation was gonna be this absolutely pleasant. To be honest, I never know. We never spoke, and there's been an absolute beautiful fluidity to it. So thank you
yeah,
for having this conversation with me.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So
So, the floor is yours. If you have any other things you'd like to share before we call it a day, if not, I'd love to schedule something with you. We could talk offline once I hit the end recording here, but please feel free to share anything else, any of your other information you'd like to share, or any topics. I can talk for days. So if you have something we want to talk about, I'm here.
spirituality, shamanic work, that could be talked forever and ever. It just doesn't stop on all topics. It could just be like all over the board. But I want to kind of end it with this as the sort of the message to more like whoever's going to be watching this video today, is that no matter who you are and where you've been, there's always a place for you on the planet to improve. There's always a place for you to also gain your own unique abilities, whatever that may be. And your unique abilities is needed on the planet right now because there is a wave that's coming through. And this wave is going to shift us as a human being, a humanity. And if we don't catch or ride on this wave, the only way you're going to ride the wave is you get to your unique self, is you get to your vibration of the higher vibration that you can, highest vibration that you can get to, so that you can capture and unlock or uncover your unique abilities. And most of you have been feeling this like urge, like I want to get to this unique ability, like what is it for me? I know there's science, I know there's spirituality, and I know there's energy, but I want to get to whatever that I need to get to. And it doesn't matter where you get to or how you get to it, but you got to be on it, right? On it, find your grit, find that, ride the purpose, because you've got to do the purpose in order to get to something unique for yourself. And that's all you're really looking for, is where's your uniqueness. There's nothing else that you really care for right now in life. Everybody, they're just wanting to know, everybody wants to know, where is my uniqueness and where do I land? Where do I place myself on this planet? What can I do different? If your mind is in the benevolence, then you're thinking this. And I want to leave you guys with, you can find it, you can do it, but you have to be saying to yourself, I desire this. How much do you desire? Well, you got to be over an 8 on a 0 to 10. You got to be over that 8 to be able to grab hold of your uniqueness and to be able to say, I want to up level my vibration. How do I do this? I have to look and seek and find, right? I have to seek and find my vibration, the vibration that something out there, someone or something out there that can upgrade my vibration to its highest possible, so then I can find and open that door. I can have the key to open the door, or someone has the key to open the door, right? To get my uniqueness so that I can also operate on a higher level, because that's really where our planet is going. We need to all operate on a higher level than we've been operating. Some people like to call it 5D. I don't know if that's scientific, but I sometimes will say 5D because I understand what that means. But what it really means
Conceptually,
is,
it works. It works on a philosophical level for sure.
yeah, philosophical, but you're operating at a higher vibrational level, frequency wise, lower frequency, but higher vibration, so that your intelligence can also be there and not be guarded whenever those waves that we were just talking about controls and comes in. Then you can say, oh, this is, your red flag goes up and says, yeah, I know this is this, and I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do this, so that you don't cause more trauma or you don't get to be in the trauma. And that also, we haven't talked about this, Mark, but that also trauma causes karma, and vice versa. So that's the
Yeah.
whole point of humanity kind of rising up, so that there isn't going to be more trauma and karma, so that people can recycle as they pass on 120 years old, 120 years old, pass on. And if they get to come back, then come back refreshed, so that the big guy up there doesn't have to keep creating new souls. And
I like it.
lastly, so that your soul doesn't get hijacked, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like I said, this past month, I've been on a little bit of a just pursuing what I'm trying to get to. And it included a trip to Las Vegas for 4 days. And 2 days before, I live in Phoenix,
Okay.
2 days before the air conditioner goes out and it's 116 degrees. So we were sitting in 105 degree weather. It's like when you start to go the right path, there will be resistance. So right
There will be.
before I couldn't go, we had to get 4 new tires on the car at a cost, close to $900, whatever it was. It's like 3 huge events came the weekend prior to leaving for this thing that was, for me, a personal make or break. It was literally, I had to make this thing because I am purposed to go here. And the resistance just increased. And people don't understand. They think that the resistance tells them they're on the wrong path. The resistance is telling you're on the correct path because you have to stay the course. The resistance is telling you it's working. I know that
Yeah.
sounds like counterintuitive to things. You think, oh, it's supposed to be so perfectly fluid. No, the resistance is just making sure that you are in the correct energy to pursue it at that moment. Sometimes you retreat, sometimes you push through. And when you retreat, you'll do it again. You may get back to it or you may change your thing. It may just not be yours. But I've pursued many times and tested that water, and it's like it feels like this is the one where I feel like I pushed through for the first time. No, I've no nothing to show for it, but it feels for me that way. And in that, I
Right,
feel very liberated and successful, regardless of whatever else comes out of that, if that makes sense.
right, right. Because sometimes that now when the resistance feels like you're resisting, but it feels like you still got to push through because there's something behind that, then yes, that's a good thing. But sometimes your resistance is also telling you, hey, there's something bad over there too. So,
That's true.
yes.
And
So you
I
have
don't mean
to,
resistance in that way, like something the intuitive piece. I just meant external, like little bumps in the road. Those are general
yes,
little obstacles you have to climb over. But
yes.
go
And
ahead.
it's
All right.
never going to be smooth when you're supposed to be at a certain place, but you feel like you know you've got to be there. You know you've got to make it. And yes, it will resist you to go to get there easily, right? Or smoothly. But again, like Mark said, you have to really just push it through. And when you push it through and you get there and you're done and you complete everything, you feel like you've accomplished so much.
Yes.
Right.
Well, Master Shaman PaLiChee,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining Not Conscious. You're officially part of the Not Conscious family. I'd love to schedule something with you after. So I'm going to hit end recording here. Please, any final words? Would you like to share some of ways we can connect with you?
You can connect with me by going to www.follythehealing.com. Folly the Healing came about in 2011 and has been ever since. It's God led. Um, but you can find me there, or you can find me on my YouTube channel at Master Shaman PaLiChee.
And that's Falithi, FALITHI.
Yes,
F as in
Folly.
Frank.
Right. Yes,
Falithi.
Folly. Yep.
Beautiful.
And I'm all out there
Thanks.
on social media. So Facebook, TikTok.
Cool.
Find me, go to the website and you'll find everything else there.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining me on Not Conscious, and I hope you have a blessed day.
Yes, warm blessings, Mark.
Thank you. Take care. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night.